and one other, and have been able to connect with people. At least I see people. At least there is some sort of a visual connection with folks. So really, my message is not about me. I don't really want to talk about myself. I want to encourage people who, particularly extroverts, people who are in sales, who are home a lot, feeling alone, maybe feeling depressed, feeling unneeded. You're still needed. You're still needed. It's just right now you're needed in a different way. And that is today's message. And that's it.
Well, that's a good message. I'm an extrovert myself, Peter, and I empathize a lot. I miss people, and I'm looking forward to being able to just get back to some sense of normalcy when it's safe, and be able to shake hands with people and not just have to do the elbow bump, you know.
Yeah.
But when it's safe and when it's the right time, I'm looking forward to it. I know we have a lot of people still rolling in. Peter, I'm going to go ahead and mute you, buddy, and take, as much as we love looking at your face, I'm going to take you off video for the time being. Let's see here. There we go. So just a few things. As we have more and more people coming in, I'm sure we'll have several kind of roll in over the next few minutes. But first, I just wanted to welcome everybody who is here and say thank you to all of our sponsors that have been so supportive of us, not only over the last couple of months, but just over time. That includes Markel, Highwoods, Inns Lake Place, the new apartment complex over in Innsbruck, Lingerfeld Properties, who am I missing? Brightview, and Town Bank. So thank you to all of our sponsors, to all the people who have continued to support us over time. We cannot keep doing what we're doing without the support of our community, and we're so thankful to be part of a community that wants to support us, that is so willing to support us all the time. So thank you 1,000 times to all of our sponsors and supporters, and to all of our community. As you can probably see in my background and the background of my two buddies, my two friends, our executive director Yvonne Mastromano, as well as our events and development director Brian Congrove. Our Zoom backgrounds are showing off our sponsors, but also we're showing off a couple of fun things coming up. So hopefully, we are hopeful that Taste of Virginia will be able to happen. We had to reschedule it, but Taste of Virginia will happen August 29th over at the Innsbruck Pavilion. Taste of Virginia is presented by Capital Ale House. We're so thankful for their support through all of this. We could not do what we do without them. And the event itself, we're excited. We have some great music. It'll be a food festival, so you can come out, get some tasty food. And of course, we'll have our signature awesome fireworks finale at the end of the night. So that is August 29th. Tickets are on sale right now for only $6 to get in all the way through June 6th, and they'll remain on sale all the way up to the day of the event. Please don't be offended. I'm putting people on mute just so we don't have any overlay on audio. We have a lot of people coming in, so there we go. We're probably missing a few people as they come in. That's all right. And then also you'll see over here. I think it's over here. I'm pointing the right way. You'll see this new Innsbruck Drive-In. So a new project that we've been working on has been bringing a drive-in theater to Innsbruck. We are looking forward to doing this. It's not 100% outlined and complete just yet. We're hoping within the next 4 to 6 weeks we will have our first date lined up, but we're going to show classic movies right there in Innsbruck in one of the awesome parking lots over at Highwoods. So thank you so much to Highwoods Properties for being so supportive of that. We have some amazing supportive sponsors that are helping us put it all together. We're going to show classic movies that you can bring your families out with the car. We'll have food trucks and vendors. But it's a great way to be able to get out of the house, maintain social distancing, and do something fun with the family. So that's something else coming up. So be on the lookout for news on the dates regarding that. Something I want to do real fast. I'm going to see if I can pull it up. Where did it go? Bear with me here, guys. I apologize. So I'm going to post something in the chat room if anybody is interested. So I want to make it clear that what we do, we could not do without the support of our sponsors, of our community. So we are a 501c4 nonprofit, and one of the things that we work on is putting on these events for everybody. We are more or less a community liaison to try to support businesses, to support philanthropy, to support the economic development in Innsbruck, and we do that by doing events. So through this time, as it's been difficult for everybody, we would just say, if you can and you are willing and able, this link that I just posted is a link to donate to the Innsbruck Foundation, and that money will go directly to helping us continue to put on these events, to start up these projects like the drive-in, to help us do things like the Taste of Virginia. We can't do these events without our community and local support. So thank you in advance to anybody who's willing and able to go in and donate to us. So again, that link is right there in the chat room. I just posted it. Just going through my list, make sure I don't forget anything. So at the end of all of this, we will have questions. So Yvonne and Dr. Cashwell will start chatting as soon as I finish. And at the very end, what we'll do is we'll start taking questions. And at the very end, if you can go, you can either just type in that you have a question, or even just type your question into the chat room. And you can direct it directly to either myself or Brian Congrove. He's another one of the co-hosts here with the Innsbruck Foundation. So direct your questions there, or you can also hit the raise hand button, and we'll be glad to unmute you so you can ask your question directly to Dr. Cashwell. Be sure to stick around afterwards so that we can give away. We have a few raffle prizes. We're going to give away a couple of gift cards to the Taste of Lebanon, 2 Taste of Virginia tickets, a gift certificate to Chow Coppery for $25, as well as 2 tickets to Innsbruck After Hours and Innsbruck After Hours concert. So be sure to stick around after everything is over, and we'll do the raffle. So without further ado, please be gracious. Please be kind to us, because this is our first time doing this. We are so happy to have Dr. Cashwell with us. Yvonne, if you want to go ahead and take over, I will mute myself, get out of the way, and you and Dr. Cashwell have at it.
Okay, thank you. I got an email from someone who is having trouble getting into the Zoom. So I call myself a multitasker, but we shall see. Well, first of all, Amy, thank you so much. This is amazing. I really feel very excited about this. I have to say that talking has never been a bit of a trouble for me. You can ask my team. But I thought, oh, what if something technical goes wrong? So as you can see, the Innsbruck Foundation has a great team. And, without Brian and Stephen's talents and, their ability to navigate these kinds of things, we would be in trouble. But I do want to ask everyone to give a virtual applause to Stephen Casper for a wonderful introduction. And Stephen is our marketing director, and he's always up for the challenge. Wonderful speaker as well. And Brian Congrove, as he said, who is in the background, who is trying to take care of these technical issues. So, but Amy, just thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And as you said, yes, you were originally scheduled for April, I believe, I think, or March.
I believe it was very shortly after, or coinciding with the time that schools closed around March 13th. It may have been shortly after that. But anyway, just as things were sort of coming unhinged in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. Unhinged is a very good word. I sent an email to someone today, and I said, I think time is evaporating. It's like on one hand, you feel like it's going slowly because you want everything back to normal. But on the other hand, it's like Monday, then it's Friday, and it's Monday, and then it's Friday. And I feel as though I'm always playing catch up. But so Dr. Amy Cashwell, Superintendent of Henrico Public Schools, we have some fun and interesting things to talk about. But I was going to be selfish up front because I'd like to just hear about you. Where are you from? Are you from Virginia?
Well, you know, I call myself a Virginian, but in full disclosure, I was not born in Virginia. I was actually born in San Francisco to a military family. So I spent most of my childhood moving around, lived in Hawaii, lived in New York, but about the time I was in high school, we landed in the Virginia Beach area, and I returned to the Virginia Beach area after college in Virginia at Longwood College at the time, and began a teaching career in Virginia Beach and had a 2 decades long career there. So I've been in Virginia quite a long time, and so it's as much home to me as any place is.
Very nice. Well, I've had a similar experience, although I started up north, but it's nothing like a good old transplant. We appreciate this state very much so, right?
That's right. It's been good to me as a home state.
Same here. Same here. You know, so we're here to talk about Henrico schools, but of course, the elephant in the room is COVID-19, the novel coronavirus that has hit us, and no one saw it coming. No one could have predicted this or been ready for it. I wrote a report recently for our foundation, and I said, you know, as we approach St. Patty's Palooza, which we had to cancel in March, we did our usual, you know, the pro forma. What if it rains? What if people don't come? What if? But we didn't say what if coronavirus shuts us down, you know, as I'm sure was your situation in some regards. So as an educator, you're probably a bit ahead of it. But the problem with, you know, among the problems with the coronavirus is that it hits us person to person, which I find I'm starving. I'm an extrovert, and I'm just starving to hug someone and to show, you know, just say hello and not be concerned or make them feel concerned. But we know that children just naturally, they touch stuff. They like to hug each other, and they're just sort of animated in that way. So I wanted to just ask you how, I think that Henrico, or maybe it was the state of Virginia, was one of the first places to shut down schools. But how did you manage to do that? And are kids still in school? How are they going to finish the year? If you could just kind of dig into some of that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. It is certainly something that no one had any inkling of on the horizon. We plan for natural disasters, we plan for any number of things, and even, heaven forbid, you know, school shooters and drills for all of those things, and things that might be incredibly disruptive or even tragic to a school division. But never would we have imagined something the scope and scale of this global pandemic. But you know, you're right. Children have the natural tendency at all ages. This is our high school students all the way down to our youngest learners, to be together, to congregate. The way we do business in our schools largely hinges on person-to-person interaction. And so when this virus first presented itself, even internationally, and we began to hear that it may be of national and then even the local concern, we began thinking right away about what that would mean for our schools, because safety is first and foremost on our mind in everything we're doing. And so we began to think about what would it look like to manage some safety protocols and health protocols in our schools, given all the challenges you mentioned about students and their nature to be close to one another. And again, just the way we're structured with classrooms full of 25, 30 students and cafeteria lines and all of those things, how would we manage it? So we knew that managing it safely was not something we were going to be equipped to do on a dime. And so just prior to the governor shutting down schools in Virginia, Henrico and in, I believe, Richmond City and a couple other localities across the state said, you know what, we're going to close for a 2-week period because we knew we had to position ourselves appropriately and understand the ramifications and safety protocols that we may need to put in place to be able to hold school safely. I don't think we ever imagined when we made that call for that 2-week closure that this would mean that we wouldn't be finishing the school year. But of course, right on the heels of our closure came the governor's closure, which was initially a few weeks, and then eventually that, you know, you're closed for the end of the school, through the end of the school year. So while we were preparing and positioning ourselves at the initial points of the closure, again, I don't think anyone would have forecast a closure for this length of time. But certainly, you know, understand why, because once we begin to think about managing those logistics in a school, you know, it's with so much being unknown about the virus and the right way, the right precautions. And I know we're still learning that. We know much more now than we did in March. Certainly March 13th, that last day we were in school, the logistics were just beyond what our most school division capabilities would be.
Well, you know, you mentioned something about the children having trouble with it, but I'm sure you've had to deal with parents not understanding as well. And the reason I say that is because at first I didn't go out at all. I was completely in my home. But as I now venture out carefully with my mask and with my gloves sometimes, but always with a mask, I see parents and children and nobody has on mask. And what that says to me is not that, you know, that doesn't brand them as something or other, but it makes me feel like their sensibility or their perspective on this is different than mine. My children are, well, one of them is grown, the other one is in high school, but I'm, you know, I bought all these masks. I mean, they're coming in from every direction finally, and everybody has to have a mask. But so I'm thinking, if you don't do that with yourself and your children, that maybe you don't even understand why school had to close to begin with.
Certainly everyone brings a different perspective to this situation. And so serving, you know, approximately 50,000 students and every family having its own unique set of circumstances. Some have been more personally impacted by this than others. And the same goes with our staff. You know, we certainly want to keep our students safe, but we're also thinking very much about our staff, not only the staff who would be providing instruction in our classrooms, but the staff who continue to play critical roles in school division operations, our food nutrition workers, our school nurses who are serving in a multitude of ways across our community, not just at the school division level, but helping with county government response at our call centers, and so many individuals who continue to be of service to the community as they were when schools were open, and making sure that we are putting the right guidelines and procedures for safety into place. But we always account for the fact that individuals have preferences and their comfort level related to things like returning to the workplace, and the accommodations that may be needed to make them safe will vary person to person, and likewise student to student.
Right. And I feel like it would be a particularly unique challenge to educate children about this without creating fear. And maybe even some of the children have experienced, I hope, not themselves maybe, but maybe they have a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or some relative somewhere who has it. And, God forbid they've experienced the tragedy associated with it. So how do you educate children in a way that provides them with the information they need without instilling fear, or is there a way?
Well, first of all, we recognize in our line of work that while teaching children content is certainly important in all of the traditional subject areas, we need to take care of teaching those life lessons as well, particularly when it comes to health and well-being. We also want to take care of students' social emotional needs. And so individual student mental health was something that was on our radar as a critical need before this global pandemic hit. And this now only adds more and more layers to that. So we recognize that while we're working with our students at a distance now virtually to help bring them academic content, we also want to make sure we're managing those aspects you mentioned. How can we help them understand what wellness and safety looks like in this new normal that we're living in, and not only from the standpoint of hand washing to precautionary measures, but self-care, managing stress. Some of our students, are in homes where there may have been job loss, and the economic toll that's taking on families, and being hungry for the first time. Students who counted on us during the school year for structure and connection and things that might have not been present in their home lives, and a daily meal that came from our school breakfast or school lunch program, are feeling those gaps, and any other number of stressors, to mourning the loss of sports seasons and traditional graduations and all the things that come with school. Those just at the simplest level, the disruption of those schedules and what students count on as the core part of their lives has been lost. And so, and then add into it any number of factors. We are committed to continuing to work with our students on meeting their social emotional needs, even at a distance. And so while it isn't easy, we're certainly focused on that.
Yeah, and when I was a child, you could have easily kept this from children. Parents kept a lot of things from kids back then. But because children are so globally connected and they have their own personal phones and iPads, and they certainly know what's going on. So you certainly can't keep a secret from them. And so I guess that's a little bit of a challenge too.
It is. And so, when we first pivoted to this idea of distance instruction, class Zoom meetings and meeting on Google Hangouts with teachers, we cautioned our educators, when you first get your students logged on, you don't dive into a math lesson. We've got to recognize what students are hearing, talking about, and thinking, just as we want to recognize the whole child in our face-to-face classrooms and what's happening in the world. Is ever more important that we do that, and caring first before you dig into the learning, and open some of those conversations and understand what students may be struggling with. And, we want to maintain those connections with them, even virtually, but spending time for things that used to happen in the classroom, like morning meetings where they might talk about things that were happening individually or in their community that could be causing them concern or stress or worry. There was an avenue for that dialogue in the classroom, and we understand that that's missing for students now, and so recreating that virtually has been important.
So you're leading me into another question that I actually hadn't previously thought of, but I suppose there are children who look at school as almost like an escape from maybe a situation that at home that actually is where the stress is being created. And, I know educators are always asked to be more than just teachers and educators, which is a tremendous role all by itself, but I'm sure teachers roll into counseling positions and things like that. So how do you deal with that personally, Amy, in terms of the added responsibility of thinking of those children who now don't have the outlet of being able to come to school and talk to somebody or just be away from home?
Truthfully, those were some of the first thoughts that crossed our mind when we recognized the length of time this closure would be. And so the teams, our school social workers, psychologists, our family advocates, who were often providing our students and their families with a number of supports and inside the school day, and even some of our wraparound after school programming that was meant to fill a gap we knew students had, immediately began to worry, how will we be able to sustain some of this for our students who need us the most? And so for that, initially it was meals. So many of our students are food insecure. We have a large number of students in Henrico County schools who qualify for free or reduced lunch. They count on that meal programming. So we quickly mobilized food distribution, grab and go food distribution sites. We have 15 running every day across Henrico County. It's a drive-through style. Our food nutrition workers safely prepare the food, and it's bagged. Students, when they come through the line, or their family member, they can get a breakfast and a lunch simultaneously. We do weekend food bags. So we started that up right away. That was something that was on our minds. We did not want any student to be hungry. And beyond that, you know, our school counselors and teachers knew who the students were who may be more vulnerable than others in a number of other aspects, even beyond nutrition. And we've reached out to those families, and you know, we're paying attention to who's logging on to class meetings, who's not. And when we're seeing that we may have lost contact with students, we're trying to find ways to keep those connections alive.
Oh, of course, yeah. Not everyone has internet. So, and I guess that kind of goes into my next question was, seeing some of the inspirational things that teachers are doing to help continue education. But how do you handle the lack of internet access for students? Classes are
It's
still
a real issue. Yeah, we knew that was an equity issue in Henrico before this happened, because we have had traditionally a one-to-one student device program at our secondary schools. And so we were hearing from a lot of our secondary students, even when schools were open, homework's a challenge. When I'm, I can't use my laptop adequately at home to access the learning. And so we knew that we needed to, particularly once we closed and virtual instruction would be a critical component, get hotspots out to our families. We had about 400 internet hotspots we distributed very quickly within the first weeks of closure, and recognized we still have a need. And so we've ordered more and are awaiting those, and plan to disperse those as quickly as we can, because there's certainly a demand for that.
Wow, that is amazing. And, kudos to Henrico for being that proactive in that regard. Classes are still in session, correct?
That is correct. And so, when we first closed, we were in sort of the emergency response mode, and we got our teachers very quickly, and they are heroic. You mentioned seeing so many creative examples of teachers doing nightly story time, reaching out to their students in a number of ways, virtual science labs from high school, science teachers' kitchens, any number of things you can think of. Our teachers didn't miss a beat, but we knew that they needed a few minutes to build some capacity on how to transform their classrooms into a virtual experience and understand what that could look like. So, as the weeks went on, that virtual instruction began to ramp up a bit. And so, for high schoolers, there was a more urgency around making sure students were able to complete credit-bearing courses. Students who were our seniors, who were on track to graduate, finished the course work that they needed so that they would be eligible for graduation, and making sure we were, doing everything we can to keep everyone on track and make sure they're ready for their next course or their next grade level.
So, yeah, what are we going to do with graduation? I mean, is it only going to be virtual? Will you do some other kind of format later?
We are thrilled that, as disappointed as we are that we cannot be face-to-face in the Siegel Center as we've traditionally done and we plan to do with our graduates in June. We are thrilled with our alternative graduation plans and got real creative, trying to make sure that we were pulling out all the stops to recognize our seniors who deserve this ceremonious and celebratory moment, and do so in a safe way that meets the guidelines that are a reality. We heard from our seniors as soon as schools were closing and this crisis began, please, remember to do something for us in June. Don't wait till the fall or later when we've gone off to school or the military or our jobs. And, and furthermore, try to make it something where we can, as much as possible, be together as a class in a manner that's safe and with our families present. And so it's challenging to meet that request given the current guidelines, but we have sort of a trifecta of graduation events planned. The first of which is a virtual ceremony, and it has all of the bells and whistles that a traditional ceremony would have at our Siegel Center venue. So they would hear from speakers such as the principal, school board members, other dignitaries, valedictorians, salutatorians, and each student would hear his or her name called and, of course, be pronounced officially graduates of Henrico County Schools. So we're encouraging watch parties for those so that, the entire school community can watch that celebration from the safety of their homes and see our students individually recognized virtually. And that'll be followed by something we're thrilled about, which will be a victory lap at the Richmond International Raceway. So they have been wonderful partners to us and opened their racetrack, this historic racetrack, for a victory lap event where the entire senior class comes in the safety of their vehicle with up to 9 guests in their car. And they're able to decorate it and all take a victory lap together, led by a pace car. Their principal will be waving the checkered flag at the finish line. Staff appropriately socially distanced at various parts along the course to cheer them on as they cross that finish line. And then we're also, the third piece of that is at each and every high school, seniors will have an appointment to come to the school in cap and gown, receive their diploma and a professional 8x10 photograph to mark that moment in a more in-person manner, but of course with appointment only and a limited number of individuals at the venue at the time. So those will be the 3 ways we celebrate our graduates. And again, while nothing can make up for what would have been in an arena style graduation, and we share the disappointment in not being able to carry through with that, we are excited about these alternatives because we do believe these are great opportunities to celebrate our well-deserving seniors.
That is wonderful. I love the creativity of the racetrack, and I was so relieved when you said you're going to have a pace car. Because some of those teachers, they might want to show out their driving skills.
I bet. I know. So definitely, everyone will remain in their vehicles, and the pace will be set appropriately. But will be no doubt a once in a lifetime kind of event. Certainly most of us would never have an opportunity to take a lap around that track. So hopefully that'll make up for some of what's been lost to have this really unique opportunity.
That's fun. I like that. I think it's almost something that you're kind of like, wow, this is kind of a better option in some ways. I'm sure that it's part of the other parts. Now, speaking of graduation and timing, and
I got it.
Know what the 2020, 2021 year is going to look like yet? I'm sure that's a moving target, but do you have any plans for the fall, or are you waiting like we are for the governor to see how things go?
Well, you're certainly right. It's a moving target, and we are awaiting, of course, official guidance from the state level, both the Virginia Department of Education, any orders the governor will have related to schools, and guidelines the CDC will put out. And they have put out some early guidance related to best practices for schools doing business in this kind of an environment. But knowing that we can't wait until that guidance is delivered to make plans, we're making plans right now. And so we have multiple scenarios on the table that we are fully working through, so that we will be very nimble to jump into action once that guidance is issued. And that would be anything from a face-to-face traditional start, in which we know that while it would be traditional in many aspects, it might mean personal protective gear like face masks, limited numbers of students on the bus at a time in any given space. So a normal face-to-face start with some procedures for safety in place. And then of course, recognizing we need to make some adjustments to our curriculum to handle any learning loss that may have happened during our closure, even though we've worked to keep those gaps at a minimum. Through distance learning, nothing can replace face-to-face instruction. So we know we're going to have that to deal with. So that would be one option. That would be the most traditional start for most. And other options where we might not be able to meet guidelines by having the entire student body present at one time. So things like rotating schedules, A days and B days for students to be in the building, and then virtual at some times, or looking at bringing back only certain groups of our students face-to-face who would benefit the most from face-to-face instruction and don't have the ease with virtual. Scenarios where we may offer families who are not comfortable sending their student back to school, even with safety guidelines in place and with the green light being given at the state level to bring kids back to school, they may not feel safe. And so what does virtual enrollment look like? We want to be able to offer those options to our families who may need to make that choice. So lots of contingency plans in place, and And then again, recognizing we might have a fully virtual opening to the fall, and that would look like distance learning. That's a bit different than what we're doing now. It would be a lot more structured to mirror the school day, many more required components, and so getting all the pieces in place for what could even be a fully virtual opening.
And do you find that teachers are very nimble? I'm sure many of them are, but do you have some teachers who are just plain uncomfortable in this space?
I think it, just as every one of our 50,000 students are different, our employees all have different circumstances and needs, and what makes, it's not just about each teacher's skill set and ability to adapt to a new work environment. We have to recognize that with schools being closed, a number of our teachers have families and young children who are also at home and out of school. So trying to manage carrying on the duties of teaching virtually while managing their own children at home. We have teachers who were much more technologically savvy and leveraged a lot of these digital platforms before the closure, and some who are using them for the very first time. And so we're trying to certainly provide the professional development and support to our staff so that everyone's comfort level with some of the digital components are there. But, we recognize also that there are staff members who are thinking about the return to fall who may be immunocompromised themselves or be in a position where there would be concerns returning. So there's certainly a lot to consider when it comes to what individual employees may need as we move forward, not whether it be virtually or face-to-face.
Right. Well, as a matter of fact, speaking of diversity, I read with delight about Amy's passport. I just love that concept, and especially in the way it was chosen to reflect your ability to virtually visit so many different places in the world with that. And your quote, I'm going to read your quote from the website. You said, "We chose the name because of Henrico's diversity, a place where I feel I can travel the world without ever leaving home." It's almost prophetic, right? You wrote that in 2018.
Yes. That is something, isn't it? And so I certainly never imagined it to have the meaning it does now. But, no doubt this is such a phenomenal community. I am thrilled to be a part of the Henrico community, and certainly have appreciated the beautiful diversity our community offers, and our community of schools and learners particularly, and took great joy in getting to have a lot of face-to-face opportunities, and getting to know the community inside and out. But yeah, it certainly was prophetic in some ways.
It's crazy, but a beautiful concept. I love it. So when you are thinking about the new year, do you think there's going to be some moment at which you have to sort of make the call, and are people sort of saying, hey, we need to know what's going on, or is everyone sort of understanding that you can't just make the decision without really understanding the scope of the phasing that the governor is putting in place based on CDC guidelines?
Yes, certainly we understand that some of this decision making is outside of our hands locally, and that we will have to follow state guidance. And so I know that families would love to know today what things will look like for their Henrico students in the fall, and we certainly would love to know as well. And so we've tried to communicate some of the scenarios that I just shared with you to our families, so they have a picture of the kinds of things we're planning for, and that they have the confidence to know that the Henrico County Schools team is leaving no stone unturned and making plans for the fall, so that once we receive that guidance, we'll be able to act quickly and have a strong plan in place to serve our students, whether it be virtually, face-to-face, or some hybrid format.
Right. And I mentioned that when I've been out, I've seen a variety of responses. Some people have on masks, some people don't. Is there a concern that there might be well, I suppose you'll either require it or not, but is there a concern about stigmatizing of some children? Will you provide masks for people who can't afford them? I mean, there's just so many different iterations of it, but how do you respectfully keep the environment at school one that is open to the diversity, but as well as helping children not to feel stigmatized. If someone says, oh, I hear your mom or your dad has COVID or 19, or your grandparent, or, you know, I'm just thinking about all the things kids deal with already, and now this other layer.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be a challenge and something that, well, we don't have all the answers for today, but we're going to certainly be responsive to as we can be. So, you know, we don't know what the requirements will be, for example, with face coverings, or what the CDC will require or perhaps just recommend, and what will be decided as safety protocols. But certainly, you know, we're going to make sure students have what they need, so that a student wouldn't choose not to come to school because they were missing, for example, a face mask and it was required. If there was something that would be required, we would make sure we were prepared to provide that for students who may not have the ability to access it. As we want our students with us if we're able to be together, and we don't want that to be a barrier. But certainly you're right. I think navigating the nuances, we saw even early before the school closure with some, you know, situations in a couple of our schools where people felt that, you know, because of their ethnicity and where this illness first, you know, took place, that there was an assumption that, oh, you know, maybe your family has brought this here, or you could be infected. And so our school counselors and our teachers were already beginning to help our students navigate some of that challenging territory before the closure, and certainly would be prepared to continue to do that once we return to school.
Oh, that's awesome. That is, yeah, there are so many different layers of challenges. Well, you have an audience here, Amy, and I'm sure you often have this, you know, an audience like this. There are leaders, we are community leaders. There are people who are in health professions and different professions. There are some people who live in the county, others who come to the county for a variety of reasons, and have come to listen to you for a number of reasons. How can we as community leaders help you and the schools? What support can we provide?
Well, I think first is understanding and patience, you know, that we don't have every answer we wish we had today about things like what the fall will look like, and that, you know, with much of what we're doing now and will be doing into the new school year is uncharted territory. And so we may not get it just right out of the gate every time, but we want to be listening to our community. We want to be responsive and understand the degree to which we're meeting individual needs, and that we may need to regroup along the way. So I would just say patient support and understanding, which the community has largely been providing us, has been wonderful. We would just ask for that continued patience and support as we navigate this.
Well, what over the last 2 years, what would you say is that thing or those things that make you most proud of what has gone on in Henrico schools?
So many things, but one thing I've been incredibly proud of is the way the Henrico schools team has used an equity lens to approach any number of initiatives across the school division, and has really centered our thinking about how we can make sure we are meeting the needs of all students, every day. I've seen that play out beautifully in all of our schools at all of our at every level, elementary through high school, in so many ways. We talked about access to technology and hotspots, but I can cite countless examples that go above and beyond that pre-COVID in our schools. And so that shift towards an equity focus has just been something I'm tremendously proud of. I'm also really proud of the work our team has done to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the whole child. The Henrico team's work around our learner profile, which recognizes the student sort of at the center of everything that we do. And it's not all about content, but about preparing our students for life, and doing everything we can to create that whole child approach is something I've also been really proud of.
Awesome. Well, you're getting some kudos in the chat room, but also a question, and I wanted to make sure we do leave some time for questions. So if you don't mind, I'll share with you the question from Fonda Lang. First of all, she gives you kudos. She says Henrico County Public Schools did a fabulous job quickly mobilizing meals and technology for students. The teachers have been great with content and engaging students during this time. The question she has for you is, with the redistricting decision being postponed. When the decision is made, will the implementation also be postponed? Essentially, will the implementation be in 2020, 21, 22, or delayed to 22, 23?
That's a great question, and one for which there's not an answer right now, but I can tell you this. Our school board did delay the decision that would have initially been made at a May 28th meeting. A vote would have been taken, and given the circumstances of not being able to fully engage our public in those last phases of the redistricting process, the board issued a statement that they would be holding on that vote until they could actively engage the public again. And so the question mark is, when will they be able to actively engage the public? And so that's something they're still wrestling with and determining the best course for that. The redistricting plans that have been on the table would have taken effect in the 21 school year. And so any decisions that would change the implementation would come with any decision or vote the board would make in the future. So we'll certainly keep the community posted if anything new or plans are made to for timeline for that.
Okay, thank you. I am going to, I had you in the spotlight video. I didn't mean to put myself there. But maybe Stephen can correct that. I should just be back where I was. But
You're
anyway.
fine.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Dr. Cashwell, I've been monitoring the chat room, and I have a couple of questions here. And while I'm asking these questions, if anybody else has any other questions for Dr. Cashwell, please feel free to type them in the chat room section, or you can raise your hand, and myself or Brian will get to them. This first question was kind of semi already addressed. It's from Jonathan Hewitson, but his question was, what's the outlook for reopening in the fall? But maybe more specifically, what kind of plans might there be for social distancing if it does open? And how challenging does Henrico County Public Schools feel it would be to reopen with some sense of normalcy?
Great questions. I don't know that we can ever open with normalcy given the circumstances. I bet that the year will feel anything like normal, even with a normal face-to-face start. So we've been looking at the feasibility of putting some of the social distancing measures that we've seen come early out of the CDC, where they're recommending desks be spaced apart, recommending students remain with the same group all day. So that would mean things like not, going into the cafeteria where you're then multiplying the number of students you've been in contact with in a day and that sort of thing. And I don't think anything about that's going to feel normal for our staff or for our students. And, there are certainly some questions as to whether some of those early guidelines would even be feasible. And again, so we'll really be looking for some guidance from our Virginia Department of Education and the CDC and the government in regards to what expectations would be. And then we'll have the challenge of determining how we'll implement those and whether they will be feasible and certainly whether there are financial implications to some of them, frankly. So, if there are multiple bus runs in a day and that sort of thing. So a lot to think through.
Awesome, thank you. Hopefully, Jonathan, that answers your question. If not, just let us know, and we'll try to readdress that. This next question comes from Clark Brown. His question is, how have educators planned what will certainly be a reconditioning for students in the fall? Meaning, I can only assume how many students will not be adept to distance learning if that's what we have to move to.
Yeah, and we're finding that now, so our teachers know which students haven't logged on, trying to make connections with them. We recognize, even though we're engaging in distance learning now, that there are students for whom that's not meeting their needs academically. And so we know that gaps may be forming and there will be some learning loss. And so we are really wrestling with how can we continue some distanced situations to continue that learning and meet gaps through some of our summer programming we're getting ready to release, where typically we might say most students have a summer break. We're looking at virtual learning opportunities for students to stay engaged all summer. And then, we recognize distance learning is not appropriate for every student. It doesn't meet every student's needs. And frankly, when we look at the developmental needs of our students, and particularly our youngest learners, the feasibility of that, meeting all of the requirements we have to cover just is not there. So some manner of face-to-face instruction is going to be critical. And so it's important to us that as soon as we're able to resume that, even if it's in a restricted manner or for partial days or rotating groups of students through, we're going to do everything we can to get back to our core face-to-face instructional practices.
Great, thank you. Same thing, Clark, if that did not address what you were looking for, just let us know in the chat room and we'll try to get it addressed. I don't have any other questions. I haven't seen any. Clark just messaged and said, thank you, Amy. You and all educators have a huge burden and we hope we can help. Thanks for the answer. And Jonathan also said, it does answer his question. Thank you so much, Amy. Yeah, I don't see other questions on here. I just want to add, I have a 5-year-old boy who's set to start kindergarten right up the road at Carver. So I am very much looking forward to finding out what will happen and how things go. And we have faith that you guys will always put our kids' safety first. And we're looking forward to hearing what happens next. So Yvonne has some closing words, and then after that, please stick around. We're going to give away some raffle prizes. Yvonne, go ahead and take it away.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to Amy, because that was, you're getting so much love here in the chat room, and it was really informative. And we just appreciate you being with us. This is, as Stephen mentioned, the first time we've ever done anything like this. And I thought it was really very, very easy. You're an easy person. Andy warned me that you could, or suggested that you don't have a problem with talking, and I see that that's true.
I do not.
So that's wonderful. Would you like to say anything to everyone who has chimed in?
Just thank you for the opportunity to be here and share some perspective of what's happening in Henrico schools right now. I really appreciate all of the support from our community, particularly our business community, and many who are represented on this call today, and for your interest and support. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. Henrico schools get a lot of really strong notoriety across the country in the top 100 category. And obviously you are the right person to be at the helm. So I'm really excited for Henrico that you are the superintendent, and especially now, it's funny how things happen. So thank you for being the leader that you are. Do you have any thoughts about way beyond COVID-19? In other words, we've gotten past it. It's a couple of years from now. Do you think that it would change forever the way school, well, you mentioned a little bit about that, but would you have some sort of, the reason I asked this, my husband said to me last night, he says, we're going to have, when all this is done, we're going to have a safety kit. We're going to have masks in it and gloves, in case this ever happens again. And I thought, well, I wouldn't have thought of that. And so are you going to have a safety kit or a safety plan?
Well, we will certainly forever think of things differently when it comes to contingency planning. There's no doubt about that. And health and safety guidelines will probably forever be changed. But I think on a bigger scale, if I look to the future in a crystal ball for education, not just in Henrico, but probably nationally, I think there's a silver lining in all of this. And that is that it's pushed us to operate in a manner we traditionally wouldn't have. And we see that there is some good that can come of it. So some things like standardized testing has been something that, many have felt was a marker that had to be in place for students to be able to successfully move on and for us to measure their performance. Well, those have been waived by the state this year. This gives school divisions a chance to show that we might be able to capture evidence of student learning in another way. So maybe those tests aren't also, that they're cracked up to be, they're not the only measure. And so much emphasis has been placed on those, and educators have been crying for some opportunities to be creative. I think that may be an outcome we see, some flexibility around what student learning might look like, and anything from requirements on seat time. We still have requirements at the high school level where students actually have to be in a seat learning for a certain number of hours to receive credits. Well, that's been waived because we're finding, you might be able to learn not just in a seat, but in other ways too. And so I think it will probably change forever some of the ways that we look at student learning and mastery for the better.
Well, that's really good. I'm glad you said that about testing, because when you said the kids were going to have to go to school during the summer, I thought, whoo, going to have to give them something else to look forward to. So make
Right.
sense, even though you're going to school.
Easing up on some of the other aspects.
That's really wonderful. Well, if everyone would show their applause, you have a reaction down there at the bottom. You can applaud Dr. Cashwell. We love you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm going to give the reins now over to Stephen Casper for the raffle and other fun stuff. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. This is awesome. We appreciate it. So fun to be back with folks.
Thanks, Yvonne. Real fast, I know we have people are dropping like flies. They're leaving. Don't leave. I want to give away free stuff. Thank you so much, Dr. Cashwell, for coming, and thank you to everybody for the flexibility. I know this is not how we normally like to meet, but we're doing the best we can with what we have. And I'm very grateful that despite everything going on, we have awesome technology to keep us connected as much as we do. June table talks, whether it will be in person or virtual like this, we have confirmed Kelly O'Keefe, right? Managing partner of the Brand Federation, formerly the VCU Brand Center. Kelly is confirmed as our speaker. So whether it's in person or virtual, please plan to attend that if you can. We'd love to have you. Let's give away some free stuff. So first, there are two separate Taste of Lebanon gift cards. So one, I believe they're $20 a piece. Brian would have to correct me on that if I'm wrong. But one, I have already selected these random individuals. So one will go to Pat O'Bannon, and the other one will go to Deborah Richards. If you are still in, what we'll ask you to do is, if you do win, please shoot us an email. I'm going to write the email. Just write a quick email to events@innsbrook.com with your contact info. We can call you. We can get your address. You're welcome to just go ahead and email us your address. Okay, apparently I have to give a different one because of reasons. Because I didn't realize Pat O'Bannon already had a position with the county, so I'll give one of those to somebody else. I've got Patty Fireband. I think that's how you pronounce that name. If you are still in, please just shoot an email to events@innsbrook.com with your contact info. We'll reach out and send you the prizes. We also want to give away 2 tickets to Taste of Virginia. Those are going to go to Ray Ferguson. So congrats, Ray. Again, just shoot us an email at events@innsbrook.com, and we'll send you those 2 Taste of Virginia tickets. I've got one $25 gift card to Chow Coppery. That one will be going to Jillian Avey. So thank you so much, Jillian. We'll just shoot us that email and we'll get that over to you. And then 2 tickets to Innsbrook After Hours. So we will be having, whatever we have to do, we are planning on having our concert series, Innsbrook After Hours. So we're going to give away 2 tickets to Innsbrook After Hours. That's going to go to Janice Clifton. So Janice, shoot us that email. We'll be glad to shoot you over those 2 tickets. So thank you so much, everybody. This was awesome. I'm so glad that it turned out as successful as it did. Again, June 18th for Kelly O'Keefe. Thank you so much to Dr. Cashwell and Henrico County Public Schools. You guys have a great day. Stay safe.